Welcome to the Breakthrough Advisor Podcast. In this podcast, we inspire advisors with ideas and pathways to break through barriers and build a thriving retirement income business. We will interview innovative technology developers, business leaders, and successful advisors, then help you organize and execute these ideas to move your business forward.
Hello and welcome to the Breakthrough Advisor. I'm your host, Eric Johnson, and today I'm joined by Jack Martin and Jeff Maxey, two fantastic folks that they've been on the podcast before, and they're going to be talking about a few things and mainly lessons from 2020. And guys, I don't know about you, but that old saying, hindsight is 2020, I hate that now. Because anytime you put 2020 with anything, it's like, ugh, you kind of cringe. And I know that we're going to be talking about, like I said, lessons from 2020 and kind of looking back. We also had a podcast earlier, just about a month ago, from Coach Joe Lucas, and did a lot of, he spoke a lot about planning and some strategies and things. But today, you guys are really going to be covering kind of what we experienced, right?
Yes, sir. I think it's a good time for us to reflect. So I've been in this business for quite a while, and I have to say that this year was pretty unique in my mind in two ways. In terms of not knowing how long this was going to last, and it seemed like each week, each month, we're being told is going to last longer and longer, and not knowing the depth of the situation that's going to arise. And so it made for a very unique planning and execution kind of year. And so I think the first lesson for me is that, hey guys, plans need adjusting. Anyone who in January said, hey, we've got this, tight strategic plan we're going to execute on, and got into, March, April, May, June, and just said, oh, well, we'll just, pull a lever here, a lever there, and get through it. I don't think is being honest. I think the degree of change that we went through, and the fog really that really was that we were operating in, really made this a pretty unique circumstance. So, Jeff, I know you were right there on the front line in Houston. What was it like there?
Early on, to your point, we didn't really know how long it would last. We were being told one thing, and yet at the same time, and throughout all of our planning, we had clients and prospects that needed our help desperately, which gave us the opportunity. But we had to really pivot and evolve about how we saw those clients and prospects. So the fog of war, I really encourage the team, our advisors, family members, anybody that would listen, see through the fog, try to see through the noise, because we got a lot coming at us. And it seems like every email was virtual this, virtual that. So you're right, we did have a plan. So we tried to execute the plan as best as we could. But thankfully we had that plan, because then at least we weren't starting from scratch. And it all had to happen, like you mentioned, very quickly and on the fly. One of the things we tried to do is, hey, let's not put something out that we have to retract. So we really were intentional about what we did put out to the field, about what we communicated. And I think we came through that part. But the hardest part, of course, as you mentioned, was the initial, I might say, uncertainty of it all.
Yeah, I would say that when I've spoken to a lot of different business owners, a lot of folks in the industry, and the common thread, the common word for 2020 is the F word, which is flexible. Not the one you're thinking of. Flexible. I think everybody had to be very, very flexible with time, with strategies, with technology. Is that what you guys are seeing on your end as well, I'm assuming?
Exactly. It's interesting that you said, as you were trailing off there with technology, because we had embarked on a year and a half project of digital transformation around InsurMark. And we had been focusing on the sales and marketing processes, and building new advisor digital platforms, new sales and marketing automation tools, and so on. And boy, howdy, did that really help us when we got into the thick of this. We accelerated the launch of that, and so we were able to have a platform that we could operate from. So the digital transformation, I think a lot of folks have said COVID didn't create the digital tools that we're seeing, but they sure accelerated how quickly we got on board with those. And Jeff, I know you were alluding to this earlier, but there are a lot of new tools from a digital perspective that we had to get on board, right?
Yes, we did, and it was based on that front line level of, if you will, infrastructure that allowed us to concentrate on other ways. So we had, like you said, Jack, the digital process in place, the infrastructure. But what we then did was we were able to turn our attention to advisors at the point of sale, and you've heard the phrase Zoom fatigue, Zoom this, virtual meetings, and I can tell you Zoom fatigue is real. Try staying on a screen 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and you'll feel Zoom fatigue. It's a whole different level of awareness and fatigue. But we needed to do that early on for advisors to say, hey, here's best practices. So we did a lot of, not necessarily the technical of, hey, click here to start your Zoom, although we did part of that. But really, it was making sure that, hey, you are engaging to that client or to that brand new prospect on a virtual platform. Everything from lighting to background to the way that you use their names to the functionality. And we did that. We turned that into an opportunity. So we did weekly calls. We brought out new virtual marketing programs. At last count, Jack and I were talking with the team here, 13 different individual either virtual marketing platforms or pieces of technology we rolled out since February or March. And so then that in and of itself creates a whole, not only workflow, but level of fatigue of making sure you get it right, making sure you communicate it to the team. So we did that. So Jack, we did hundreds of individual coaching sessions with our ADCs and with advisors, one-on-one meetings, not only on Zoom, but on conference calls, just to try to help them out with a level of support that, quite frankly, they deserve and need. So, Jack?
What's interesting, so this whole lesson about, getting to digital as quickly as you can really came home for us, both from our perspective as well as from our advisor client perspective. It really I think sets the table for us in 2021 to say, we don't need to look back. What we're seeing and hearing from consumers is that they are embracing this new technology. That maybe we were too rigid in saying the only way we can interact with our clients, is across the kitchen table or in our office or, at a dinner seminar. I mean, that ship really has sailed. We may have some of that in the future, but what I'm hearing from consumers and advisors as well is, going forward, I don't know if I'm going to have meetings in my office anymore. I certainly not in 2021. I don't, and I don't know that I need to. I mean, my clients are saying I'm fine with Zoom. I like that. It gives me a little bit more accessibility. It makes it a little bit more convenient for me. I don't have to drive across town to meet with you. So I think that's a really important lesson for us. And as we think about how we attack 2021 and after, I think we look at it now through a digital lens as opposed to, how do we create all of those personal connections? And that's probably the good news and the bad news, as you were alluding to, Jeff. There's that need to read the room, to read the person, to see the physical cues, to do those kinds of things. And if we're going to do that through Zoom, that's where a lot of the fatigue comes from.
Yeah, I think you and I had a different conversation where we were talking about those individual soft skills. A lot of times a dialogue across a conference room table or across a desk comes across one way, but when you're on Zoom, your client or prospect may only see your face. Is it well lit? What's the background? Is it cluttered? Make sure it's not. Make sure that you take advantage of, hey, I'm going to use your name as much as I can. It's all of those soft skills that not only did we coach and teach to, But if an advisor will use those, it will help them in this transition that we're talking about here, Jack.
It is. There's it's funny to think about it, but when you think about the future of advice and you think about the post-pandemic, right now it's a little hard to see that, but we'll get there. Um, when you think about the future of advice, as you say, a, a lot of really smart people think that soft skills are going to be at the heart of that. If you're going to be successful, you're going to have to figure out ways that you can demonstrate that to clients. And so certainly what we're doing today, is a great example. Not, I don't need to do a commercial for podcasting, because if you're listening to this, they're great. You know that they're the best way to reach a large group of people, with your own voice and your own words, and deliver that authenticity. But soft skills is an area that we're focusing on in 2021 with our advisors to help them hone that, because there are a lot of people that think in the future an advisor's ability to do those skills is going to be more important than the credentials they have.
100%.
And
And Jack, if I can, right there, you and I have had conversations and some dialogue about, an advisor or even us as salespeople upping our personality game. Would you talk just a little bit more about that?
Oh yeah. I think a lot of us took for granted, phone conversations in the past, and voicemails and emails, and we let that pass as communication. And for example, in a dinner seminar, we were able to make up for the fact that maybe we weren't expressing ourselves as fully as we should. Maybe we weren't demonstrating to people, what's in our heart, what's in our values, and so on, because we were able to walk up to them and shake their hands and say, "I'd like to introduce you to a client of mine." But that doesn't happen now. And so what we've really got to do is figure out how do we now communicate who we are and why someone should be doing business with us as a person. How do we do that in a virtual context? And that's not easy. There's a skill set there. There certainly are tools that we need to use, and more importantly, there are platforms. This is a great platform, but there are platforms evolving now where advisors will be part of a network, and by being part of that network, that will represent to the clients good value and a trusted advisor network. So upping the personality game, getting past, those short voicemails, short emails, being more personable. That just takes a little bit more effort. So yeah, I agree with you. Upping the personality game is a big deal. One other lesson, not to get too sentimental, but we no longer can take the personal connections for granted. The days of being able to walk into the office and see all of the InsurMark people and joke around the water cooler and those kinds of things, that's impacted us as an organization, but it's impacted advisors and their clients as well. Jeff, so you're managing that day to day. What's that been like?
So, well, one of the things, if I can, real quickly before we move forward on that, literally just last night on the way home, I was talking to one of our Hall of Fame members. And he goes, "Jeff, I'm done. I'm ready to go see people. I'm ready to be, to build up those connections. I miss my peers. I miss learning from them." And so I think that's something that that with intentionality we're going to try to do in some type of platform. But I know it's definitely being missed by not only us but our advisors across the country. So one of the things we did, Jack, especially early on, I mentioned earlier the fog, you're trying to see through it. The markets, remember March, it was just tanking, which is usually a good opportunity for our particular product, safety guarantees. And it was. So we saw an uptick on that side. But at the end of the day, we don't control the broader markets. We don't control, in general, the FIA space or the life insurance underwriting space. But what we do control is not only our attitude, but we also control our activity. And so if we said at one time around here at InsurMark, control your activity, be active, use video, use phone, use email, use any medium possible that's possible to make sure that we're staying in front of clients and prospects. And so no matter what department you're in, the sales side, the office services side, advisor services side, let's be active and intentional in our activity. And if we do that, then it'll all settle out and it'll be favorable. And so it has. And so we've really reminded the team, and they've really taken the ball with this and ran with it to be active and involved with advisors. That's the benefit, if you will, of doing what we do. We have not only customers across this country, but friends. And there's that human element that we were involved in of somebody had the virus or somebody's son or daughter really was sick. And so we've really wanted to be in front and involved in our clients and agents' lives. So control what you can control has a lot of different meanings, Jack.
Yeah, I know I heard that mantra at least 1,000 times this year.
At least.
One of the other, we're coming into the end of the year and the big holiday season and so on. And I think for me, one of the other lessons learned this year is that holidays aren't the same anymore. As we went through Memorial Day and then 4th of July and then Labor Day and then Thanksgiving, they just weren't the same. And, part of that is, folks weren't traveling, so we didn't have the big get-togethers, and we had all those restrictions about, how many people are supposed to get together and all those kinds of things. And so, now as I'm looking forward to Christmas and New Year's, those are going to be different. They're going to be smaller. They're going to be local. That impacts me and my clients, from an emotional perspective, but it also impacts us from a business perspective. Jeff, what are you hearing?
What I'm hearing from advisors is because to kind of some background conversations that we've had is people aren't necessarily traveling. Not necessarily taking time off. Some advisors have told me, hey, I've been forced to take some time off in my area because of shutdowns or et cetera. So I'm really just, I'm going to take some time off for the holidays, right around New Year's, Christmas, and that particular holiday. But I'm really working. I'm going to be involved in my office much more so than typically I am this time of year, just because of the year that it has been. And so a lot of advisors are adjusting their mindset to, I don't think it's a long-term new normal. I think it's the 2020 normal. If we talk about that from what we were talking about earlier about the year of 2020. So that's it from a business perspective. And then what that'll allow, and I've heard from some top advisors, is they're going to work right up to Christmas, a little in between Christmas and New Year's, but then they get that momentum that's going into January, which feels differently this year as well because of the activity that's taking place with them.
Yes, there's an opportunity, and yes, there's a need, to be in contact, with our clients and with advisors. But by the same token, I've just got to force myself to say we need some time to recharge before we hit 2021. Let's make sure we get some downtime to refresh and recharge the batteries, right?
Absolutely. I would say, Jack, to that, I know a lot of advisors have been running hard. It's this new normal. I know our teams have all been running really hard, implementing different programs, products, technology, marketing opportunities. It's been a very robust 2020. So the recharging of batteries rolling into January is a big, big deal around here.
That kind of circles back to where we started, which was, we got into this and we didn't know how long it was going to last or how deep it was going to be. And we may have a better sense now of how bad it can be, but we still don't, while we may see a little light at the end of the tunnel, we don't know how much longer business is going to be like this. So I think it is important that we take time so that we can, just to remember this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Correct.
That this isn't going to go away anytime soon, when we can go off and start doing cruises again. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And Jack, the thinking too, if you go forwards, if you think about March and April, we didn't know how long, but I don't think anybody anticipated really how long it would be. Probably a fair response. But I think a number of advisors might have said March, April, hey, I'm just going to wait this out. But what we really saw as we kind of reflect on 2020 is in the month of June, July, a number of advisors then started saying, hey, I'm not going to wait this out any longer. I'm going to do something. And that's when we really saw an uptick in a lot of our tech training, our Zoom type training, or our virtual platform training. To your point, you can't wait it out. We don't know how long it's going to be, but we do have the tools and technology and processes that'll help you out. So sorry I cut you off there, but a point to note there.
No, and just to underscore the tools and technologies. So here's how much it's changed. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and they had their company Christmas party last week, but it was virtual. So they had a happy hour. So they had all the mixers and accoutrement delivered, and then they played virtual trivia. And they had software that intervened in their Zoom session. So they divided up into teams, and there was a clock that ran, and the virtual trivia game ran the timer, asked the questions, gave the scores, and all of that. Who would have ever imagined, 9, 10 months ago, that we'd be sitting here having, virtual Christmas parties with virtual trivia, and sitting in our own homes sharing a happy hour? Who would have ever imagined that? I mean, the technology has come so far so fast, and to me, that's a big lesson. That we've got to be nimble. We've got to be open and receptive to technology, because it's evolving so quickly, and there are new tools that are going to help us do all of the things that we've been talking about for the last few minutes. So that was a good point. I think for me, one final lesson, and I know, Jeff, you and I have talked about this a lot. The lesson for me is to have a new sense of gratitude. Appreciating not only those opportunities to have a little bit of normalcy, like the company Christmas party, but also in the face of how bad this thing has really become, and how it's touched lives of so many people that we know and love. So to me, that's a big lesson out of this year.
And Jack, we are here to serve, and it's out of that service that we find those opportunities to not only help somebody with their business, but to help them personally. And there's a great sense of accomplishment that says, hey, I was able to make a positive difference in not only that advisor's life or practice, but at the end of the day, his or her consumer that now has the safety and guarantees of the products that we have. We've been talking about the pandemic, but then when we talk about the financial planning side, the products that we offer guarantee, peace of mind, and it goes all the way down to the chain, to the end user consumer whose hard-earned, probably life savings that we're working with. And that's a responsibility that we take very humbly, but we're very grateful to be able to serve in all of that, not only the human element, the emotional element, the business element. That's a great position that we here acknowledge that we're able to serve in that area, and we're very grateful for that opportunity.
Absolutely. It's interesting, as I'm thinking back to March and April. I remember how we were hearing from advisors how traumatized their clients were, not just about the markets, but about the pandemic, and how they felt the need to stay in connection with them, and to build those relationships, from a human level, to connect with those people while they were locked up. As my dad says, he's been locked up in his cave for 10 months. But the advisors as well, so there was a lot of stress that we had to help them with. So I'm just grateful to have been in a position to help consumers and advisors along the way. So,
and Jack, what that allows us to do, what that allows us to do is roll into 2021 with momentum of helping and serving. The stories across our advisor platform, where somebody was finally able to open up, but then got blocked because of certain events in their area. And so we look forward to 2021 starting with momentum. As we took just a brief little look back of 2020 on lessons learned, and we've talked about a few things, but I would highly recommend talk to your advisor development consultant too. Or if your systems aren't in the cloud, that's been a big benefit that's been able to help us. March 15th, Sunday, we did an all company conference call, and we said, hey, you're working from home this week, and not that there's big benefits to a hurricane blowing into the Texas Gulf Coast area, but our systems are in the cloud, and grab your computer. And we thought it was just for a small amount of time. But even as we record this podcast now, our team is functioning virtually and has functioned marvelously all the way through this process, this pandemic. And so if your systems aren't in the cloud, that will allow you to conduct business anywhere. And then what we've learned through this is people are really versatile. If you give them a roadmap and give them the right direction, we've found the versatility of not only our staff, advisors, and even their consumers to be very, very versatile. So, Jack?
Well, yeah, so Eric, that's just a few of the lessons that we're reflecting on from 2020, and I think they set the table for 2021. A lot of it's about technology. While you might not have been so tech savvy in the past, a lot of people have become very tech savvy now, and are much more comfortable with this, and it's only going to evolve more. And focusing on developing those soft skills and getting on a platform that's going to allow you to build those connections and relationships in a more virtual world, accepting the reality that a large part of the way we do business today is the way we're going to do business post-pandemic, that the future of advice really is around soft skills and platforms and virtual business and so on. And so, I think it's important to accept, where we are and to start to evolve going forward. And I know for Jeff and I, that's where we are.
Guys, I love the fact that you really ended this on opportunity. And I would say that for 2021, adoption of technology is one thing, but also adaptation, right? Working with advisors for as long as I have, one of the things that I helped folks implement, my clients implement, was when they would do seminars, no matter what kind of seminar it was, I would have them videotape it and then send a highlight reel. I'm using air quotes on a podcast, which is not effective, but a highlight reel to the attendees, right? Because when you're in person and you're in a meeting, so much information is being passed to that potential client, to that prospect, that a lot of times they get overwhelmed. So they would do that. But I don't know any advisor pre-COVID that would record their initial meetings or their initial couple meetings with their clients. But if we adapt to what we have now, you can record those Zoom meetings. You can record those initial meetings that you're having with folks and send them to them afterwards, because they're not going to remember everything, right? I mean, is that something that you guys are seeing any of your advisors doing so that they can make sure that their prospects are getting all the information that they're trying to get across?
In public speaking, you each have a different tick.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we tell the story, maybe for some people, they clasp their hands together, they blink, and you learn to be a better public speaker by watching yourself. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody's actually doing that, Eric, but I do think it's a good idea. It's about using the tools in tech, whether it be a video screen or a Zoom screen, to get better at your craft.
Well, I'm just thinking,
it's a great idea.
I'm thinking primarily the fact that most advisors that I've worked with, they're telling, they're speaking to a prospect in their office for an hour, right? 45 minutes to an hour at least. And at some point, a lot of times they get a deer in the headlight looks or whatever. They have so much information coming at them, they don't remember everything. So that's why we would put together these highlight reels from a seminar. So it was maybe the highlight reel was 10 minutes long, where the seminar could have been an hour or an hour and a half, but it hit all the points that they wanted them to remember. And so I know that advisors they have the ability to record Zoom meetings and then send those as a follow-up. Hey, here's just as a reminder, here's what we talked about. If you review this, have any other questions, it gives the people a sense of control and the fact that, not everybody's great at taking notes and so on and so forth. If we don't like the question, we scratch it. It's not a big deal.
No. I think what you set up, Eric, is an interesting point when it comes to the use of video.
Right.
Certainly, from the perspective of helping the client reflect on that after the meeting, that's certainly a powerful tool. But if you take that a step further, I mean, in the meeting itself, I mean, why wouldn't an advisor, have a demonstration? Here's how. Visually, you can see how the product solution I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to you about works, and so you've saved 5 or 10 of those. So it's done in a very dramatic way, and you can use it. And then as you start to say, all right, so how do I use video? And I'm not reliant just on phone and email. So maybe that there's an overarching intro kind of video that you do, and you say, here's the notes in case you missed it, or
Mm-hmm.
here's part of what we talked about in that meeting, and here's why this is important. So for our team, we are focusing more and more on personalizing videos,
Mm-hmm.
recording those short messages to a specific advisor or consumer, pushing those out as a way to communicate and get our message across. So I think what you're onto, Eric, is video is an important tool in 2021, and there are lots of ways to use it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jeff?
I do. I like that. It's just one of the many tools that are available.
Yep, absolutely. And I just think, again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. And the reason you guys do this podcast is because of the fact that when clients can hear your voice, when people hear your voice, they get to know you, even if it's not in person, even if it's not live, right? They hear you. They hear your passion, how much you care, what you're really, really seeking for them as solution-wise or whatever. And I think that really endears you to them, even though you're not even actually taking the time live to do that. So again, video, whether it's video or podcasting or any of those things, I think it's very, very powerful to get your message across in a very personal way instead of just sending out that newsletter or sending out that market update or sending out that whatever that people just don't want to read anymore.
Agreed. Great point.
All right, guys. Well, again, I'm looking forward to a very, very healthy and robust 2021, and to get this other year we won't mention, the year that won't be mentioned, behind us. And I just wish you all the best in this brand new year, to you and all your advisors, all the folks that you work with.
Thank you very much, Eric. And to you as well.
Thank you. And to you, the listener, we wish the same thing for you, and we appreciate you listening to the Breakthrough Advisor podcast. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when we come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your colleagues. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at InsurMark, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Breakthrough Advisor podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of InsurMark. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.